we take any questions you may have, I would like to ask our executive director to come forward for a few comments, because as I mentioned at the outset, Priests for Life does have a wide variety of activities that we will carry out during this election year, and that plan is shaping up. One of our key advisors is also here, Dr. Diehl Hudson, and we're grateful for his work over many election cycles to implement the kind of things we're saying here, and we will be working with him closely in this current election cycle. But Janet Morana has been involved with Priests for Life since its very inception in the early 1990s, and oversees the various projects of our organization. She is also an author and speaker herself. She wrote the book called Recall Abortion, and is on television on EWTN, producing several different series which deal with these election-related issues very extensively and explicitly. So Janet, welcome, and we welcome your remarks.
Thank you, Father, and I'll be very brief. Just to let you know that our team, which of course includes Father Pavone, myself, Father Stephen M. Morana, Dr. Alvita King, Kevin Berg, Teresa Berg, Brian Kemper, will be out on the road this year, really making ourselves available to speak in churches, at conferences, at banquets and events. So we can also clearly define the most important issue here in this coming election, which is abortion. And if a candidate cannot, as Father said, respect the life of a little baby, how can he respect ours? And we're going to be very clear on this. We have a special website, politicalresponsibility.com, and I encourage you to visit that website. We will have all the information you need to know to get involved. I will be working very closely with Dr. Diehl Hudson, who is now part of our team as a consultant this year. And Diehl Hudson and I worked very closely in the 2004 election on the Catholic outreach to re-elect President Bush. And we know how to get the ground game going. And we are going to have a new program we're going to be introducing, Drivers for Life. So again, you'll just go to politicalresponsibility.com where you can sign up, because the ground game this year is going to be very important. Early voting is going to be key. Defining the issues with the candidates is going to be key. And we will have, once the conventions are over, a C3 friendly voters guide, which we will have on that website to download free of charge. And we are going to get rid of the kick out of the parking lot Sunday, because we're going to have our people out there on the ground game. And no matter what, Drivers for Life, distribute the voters guides, etc. We are going to get a pro-life candidate back in the White House so that we can bring the end to abortion in our nation. We don't want abortion to be just illegal or legal or illegal. We want it to be unthinkable choice for any people facing an unplanned pregnancy. So we're going to fight hard, and I think we will win because we have God on our side. Thank you.
Any of our presenters today or I would be happy to answer any particular questions that you might have based on what we said. Diehl.
I've always wondered, when I hear lay people, leaders, pastors, bishops, and so forth, cite the IRS restrictions of vagueness, which I now understand a lot better hearing Jim and Christiana. Whether they just use that as an excuse because it's really not in their gut to proclaim the life issue and the inviolability of unborn life. I mean, I'm not asking you to name names, but I'm just wondering, what's your impression of what's out there? Is it really fear of being brought to task and investigated by the IRS, or in many cases it's just a convenient excuse?
Yes, I think there are a number of things going on. I do see a lot of fear and hesitation among the clergy, not about having the IRS come in, but rather about the criticism they will face from their parishioners or some prominent parishioner who's a donor, who is also an avid Democrat supporter, coming up and saying, well, you've offended me and our party and our candidates and our platform and and they don't know how to deal with that opposition. On an emotional and personal level, they don't know how to deal with it very often. And the dynamics going on here, I think, are several. There's a fundamental fear, a lack of self-confidence, that then we run to the tax guy to hide behind to convince ourselves that we really don't have to engage in what we find so threatening or uncomfortable. Secondly, there is a massive ignorance about the state of the law, and feeding into that massive ignorance then and making the problem worse are some of these directives and memos that we have referred to and quoted here that will again come out this season, and again that only makes matters worse because the pastors don't know how to make heads or tails of what the legal limits really are. Then I think a third dynamic that's happening is very simply political loyalty. We have within the church many very authentic, very important social programs and priorities that are being pursued, and in the midst of pursuing them, and then these also are implementations of the gospel and of the church's social teaching, but in the midst of pursuing a lot of these programs and projects, friendships and loyalties and collaborative relationships are developed with leaders in the Democratic Party, a party that has a platform that is very pro-abortion. And so then people are put in a dilemma. You know, am I going to offend my friend whom I'm relying on for help to advance this particular social project by opposing them when it comes to this other also very important social priority of protecting the unborn? And I think a lot of folks in the church find themselves, and in the clergy, find themselves torn in this particular way, and I think that's part of what's happening as well. So either of you want to add to what Deal's question? Okay, thanks Deal for that.
I want to follow up.
Yeah.
I think about 3 weeks ago, there was a conference in the Vatican, and our mutual friend, Father Robert Sirico, was sitting in there, and a cardinal, I won't name him, sitting next to him, explicitly said that climate change was just as important an issue as abortion. Now, of course, Sirico jumped on that, as did a lot of people in the press, but doesn't it create an atmosphere of confusion among Catholics who read, and a lot of Catholics don't read any news at all, but that kind of thing has a tendency to filter its way down.
You know, there are several things that have not changed. One is the arithmetic. Nothing claims more human life than abortion, as we know. Not cancer, not AIDS, not heart disease, not poverty, not war, not terrorism, not capital punishment, certainly not climate change. Nothing takes more human lives than abortion. The arithmetic hasn't changed. The second thing that hasn't changed is the logic. Every other right, every other good that we possess depends on life itself. If you don't have life, you don't have anything at all. If you destroy the life of the baby, you've destroyed his or her education, healthcare, housing, employment, protection from terrorism, protection from climate change. You've destroyed everything for that person by that one act of violence known as abortion. The logic hasn't changed. Every other right depends on life. And the third thing that hasn't changed is the teaching. Explicitly in Evangelium Vitae by John Paul II, and in our own bishop's document, Living the Gospel of Life, and in many other documents of the Church, it has been laid out clearly that abortion is, among the moral issues, worthy of urgent priority and attention. And that phrase, urgent priority and attention, is contained in our own bishop's pastoral plan for pro-life activities that has been in effect for many years. The latest version of it was issued in 2001 and is still valid today. So for somebody to say that climate change is as important as abortion, let's put aside whatever title the person has who said it, whatever position they hold, or whatever garments they wear. It's absurd and needs to be challenged as absurd. And this, of course, is part of the educational activity that we've been engaged in all these election cycles, is to show why we put urgent priority and attention on abortion. Not because it's the only issue, but because the right to life is the core of every issue. That's why. Janet is telling me our time is up. Listen, we are grateful for the participation of all of you, media.